Hey, how's it going? Dr. Medic here. This month we have everybody's favorite Russian family man, Heavy Weapons Guy. If you don't know at this point, this is the series where I take my underappreciated weapons video from last July, and I cut it up into segments for your enjoyment, to make it a little bit more approachable, since that video was an hour and 40 minutes long. It is one weapon for each slot, but to make it a little more interesting for you guys, especially for those who've actually seen the original video, this one will have one new segment specifically created for this video and this video only, if not two. This specific one only has one segment. That weapon can be for any slot that I desire it to be for. Now that you're caught up, let's get into it. Here we are. Really, all of Heavy's weapons are pretty good. There isn't one that's technically bad. Well, I guess except for the eviction notice. But when it comes to primaries, I mean, it's pretty hard to screw up a minigun that could delete any class in under a second. Every single minigun is pretty good. There's just one minigun that I think gets a little bit more flack than it really deserves, in all honesty. That being the Hulong Heater. I have in recent times seen people start to warm up to this weapon, no pun intended, but it is still often on the back burner. The Hulong Heatmaker, as it was called on launch, has a ring that pulses a couple times per second and lights anyone on fire who gets too close, assuming their feet are touching the ground, which will make sense later. It also has a 25% damage bonus versus burning enemies, which is always nice. However, it has a base 10% damage penalty and consumes 4 ammo per second for just being revved up, meaning if you are firing at the same time, you can quickly run out of ammunition if you aren't paying attention. People see that 10% damage penalty and that ammo consumption and think, man, this minigun just sucks. When in reality, that is completely incorrect and couldn't be further from the truth. While yes, ammo consumption does suck, as you could just quickly run out of ammo, if you are cognizant of your ammo count, you shouldn't have really any issues. So yeah, and while the 10% damage penalty does suck, this is a minigun for God's sake. It still does well over 400 damage, which in most cases isn't going to make the difference between this and, say, the minigun or the Tomislav. Well, I guess the Tomislav has a slower firing speed. It could actually be out Tomislav, potentially. And if they're really close to you, you light them on fire, boom, extra 25% damage on top of that. The fire ring is nice for when you're in a crowded area, so you can hit people multiple times, or hit multiple people at once, I should say. Just don't try to use this from high ground, because you may actually blind yourself, as the ring is always visible beneath your feet. Which is annoying, but it's not terrible. You can also expose spies who backstab you. Well, yes, a spy could jump over it. That does require the spy to both know this trick and perform it correctly. It's totally doable, but still, the ring of fire can definitely be a deterrent. You know, it may not be the end-all be-all for the spy, but the spy will be less likely, or at least think twice before trying to stab you. And then, of course, like I said, you're in a small room, close proximity with everybody, you can light a bunch of people on fire, and you do that extra 25% damage against burning enemies. You get nearly the damage of the Brass Beast, but move at normal heavy speed with normal heavy spin-up time. It's really good. The Hulong Heater, or the Hulong Heatmaker, depending on when you first play this game, is just stupid good, and I'm not 100% sure why it gets neglected as much as it does. Some people say this is even the worst minigun, and in my opinion, that is incorrect. It's definitely not a bad weapon by any means. Now, this next one, however, may be a bit more of a controversial pick, and I'll definitely have to sort of explain myself a lot more. This next one is always a fun one to talk about. For heavy secondaries, I decided to go with the shotgun. And no, this is not a joke. The shotgun is the shotgun. You've all used it. 10 pellets, a base damage of 6 with a minimum of about 3. Technically it's a bit more, but it rounds around 3. And a max of 9, allowing for a max damage hit to deal 90 damage. I'm sure you all knew that, but just in case. Okay. Hear me out on this one. I know what a lot of you may be thinking. That I'm joking, but I am not. The shotgun is a seriously underrated item for heavy. Prior to about 2010, the minigun used to rev up 25% slower, and you used to move a bit slower as well, moving at 80 hammer units compared to the day's 110. To put into perspective, Sniper moves at 80 hammer units while charging anything except the Huntsman. It made sense in the past, because the minigun was such a commitment to use. However, when they buffed the speed in which heavy moves and revs up, the shotgun became a little bit less of a mainstay. The thing is despite this buff, the shotgun is honestly still pretty good. You see, people think that the shotgun is only useful for Fat Scout, but that's just because they aren't thinking far enough ahead, and they're not very creative. I'm just kidding. But while I cannot deny the versatility of the sandwich and other lunchbox items, the shotgun is still pretty effective. The minigun takes about 0.87 seconds to rev up, which can definitely be the difference between life and death in a game where you can be pretty much deleted instantly. Well, maybe not as fast as something like Call of Duty, but the time to kill is still pretty quick. So the best time to use your shotgun is to, one, pester snipers that are shooting at you, so you can jump around and make it a bit harder to get hit, while also making the snipers aim flinch. Thought I'd throw that in there. That is actually a really good use case for this weapon, but here's the main use case for it. When walking through corridors, it can be a good idea to have your shotgun ready to blast enemies away, especially mobile enemies. A competent Demoman or soldier can deal with you before you even have time to rev up your minigun, even with something like the Tomislav. However, if you have your shotgun out, you could jump, dodge, and weave while applying pressure. The shotgun is still pretty strong. Yes, it's only 90 damage, but it can 2-shot most enemies, 3-shot soldiers, and I guess in a heavy battle, honestly, yes, you'll probably lose those, but you have a better chance of winning against 8 of the 9 classes if you can dodge and weave, if you know how to move around. Because while the shotgun, like I said, doesn't do as much damage, it is still really good. And it's really effective against scouts. Scout Scattergun does more damage. Its max ramp up is 104 compared to your 90. It should be 105, but for some reason it comes out to 104. Not 100% sure why, but whatever. Here's the thing. You have 300 health. Normally you are extremely vulnerable as you move at a snail's pace. And yes, the minigun does do a ton of damage, and the majority of the time it is the best pick, but the shotgun can be really useful for enemies who are able to peek or jump up and around you, like a scout. I mean, you've all seen it, and if you're a scout main, you've probably done it, jumping around the heavy's head. However, the thing is, that's only when the heavy's fully revved up. He can't move around that much. If you have your shotgun on you and you start jumping around too, it can make it a lot harder for you to get hit. I have used this technique multiple times. Fighting scouts, instead of pulling out my minigun, I'll pull out my shotgun and jump around, and they'll start to miss. Whereas if I have my minigun out, revved up, shooting them, especially with something like the Brass Beast, which I don't use much, but, on occasion, it makes me a sitting duck. That's all I'm going to say. Is it as good as the majority of lunchbox items? No. Those will be more useful the majority of the time, I have to admit. But remember, this is about underrated weapons, not weapons that are really, really good. Necessarily, just weapons that get mistreated when they really shouldn't. But seriously, do not sleep on the shotguns, any of them. The Panic Attack is good, the Family Business is good, but specifically I was talking about the stock shotgun here. Sometimes it's better to pack heat rather than packing lunch. Now, it is time for us to move on to the melee weapon. Okay, I'm going to be honest, all of Heavy's melee weapons are pretty properly rated, so this pick is going to be kinda weird. I only picked it because people do not actually use it for its intended purpose. If you play TF2 for more than 30 minutes, you already know what melee weapon I'm talking about. That weapon is the Holiday Punch. Like I said, it's a weird pick, but just give me a minute to explain. The Holiday Punch is a weird weapon. Its upsides is that upon a successful critical hit, whether random or via its built-in on-demand crit system, it will cause the enemy to play their Schadenfreude animation, their laughing animation, making the enemies, laugh. It will guarantee crits from behind if you manage to hit them in the back, obviously, and it will always make enemies who are wearing the Holiday Punch laugh, similar to how the half Zatoichi always kills someone who has it active. I actually didn't know that was a stat, but it's very rare that I've ever ran into another Holiday Punch heavy who was actually using the Holiday Punch as intended. And I'm going to be completely honest, I'm not a friendly killer, but I don't hoovy around a lot. I really don't. The only downside to this weapon is that crits deal 0 damage. Literally, it doesn't do any damage, and that's the only downside listed. The normal hit still does 65 damage, which has always been kind of weird to me. It's a downside that is pretty unique. It's actually completely unique to the Holiday Punch. This weapon is often used on, like I said, hoovies or friendly players to show their friendliness. or the sandwich is usually with the sandwich and or second banana. Which is funny because when you use this weapon legitimately, you always get the enemies who kind of second guess themselves when you pull them out with the intention of actually using them to kill. The Holiday Punch is pretty much a straight upgrade, so you don't have to worry much about anything, which is very nice. The thing is while Hoovies are the ones who utilize this the most, the Holiday Punch can be effective for stopping pushes when an enemy gets too close and you have to hit the panic button a little bit. Of course, you have a minigun, which is most of the time going to be your best bet, or even a shotgun if your base is hell. So the melee weapon is your last resort. However, there is one place where this weapon shines, and that's against Ubered enemies. You see, there's not much you can do against Ubered enemies as a heavy, really. And really as any class. You got the Loose Cannon on Demoman, you got Air Blast on Pyro, but there's not much you can do. And you actually have the secondary attack on the Cowmangler, which actually knocks around Ubered enemies. I learned that just recently, actually. But the Holiday Punch can force Ubered enemies to go into their Schadenfreude animation, which is super cool. And you can basically just completely screw over their Uber because the person you just hit can't do anything about it. They have to play their entire animation, which can take about 5 seconds, basically draining the Uber. If you can get to like a vantage point above the Ubered enemy and just kind of drop down onto them, just screw them over, it's glorious, it's awesome. I've done it a few times. I don't believe I got any footage this time because it is kind of hard to pull off on occasion because you kind of have to know the Uber's coming and they can't see you, but it's definitely happened. Like I said, most of all Heavy's melee weapons are pretty properly rated, so there isn't really much to say. However, I'm surprised at the lack of Heavies who actually run this melee as intended. Yes, the Gru and Fist of Steel are hard to pass up, but the Holiday Punch is a direct upgrade and it's not too bad. Here we have a new heavy weapon guy segment, so what am I going to go with? Well, I could talk about the Brass Beast, however that'd be kind of disingenuous because I rarely ever use it outside of Man vs. Machine, and even then I kind of prefer the minigun. I could talk about the Natasha, but my brain isn't quite soup yet, so that's off the table. Nothing else I really want to talk about. The weapon I am going to talk about is one that has been talked about quite a bit, and I believe that most people at minimum have a sliver of respect for, though very few use and truly understand how good this item can be. They don't really understand the strengths of it. I talked about the shotgun last time. It's time to talk about arguably the safer pick, but still a good one to talk about, the DeLocust Bar. DeLocust Bar? DeLocust Bar? DeLocust Bar. The DeLocust Bar Chocolat is a heavy lunchbox item that is kind of just like the sandwich. The DeLocust Bar, unlike the sandwich though, only heals for 25 health per bite. Still better than the original 15 it was on launch, but hey, you know, we get there. With 4 bites, this allows the heavy to heal up to 100 HP. However, that's not where this weapon really shines. It really shines with its main gimmick, which I'm sure we all know, but for those who don't, I'm going to have to say it. It increases the heavy's max health by 50 for 30 seconds, bringing that 300 up to 350. Unfortunately, this does not stack with overheal, so you're stuck at a 450 max overheal, but it does increase your maximum HP otherwise, so you get more health from health packs and stuff like that. The bar takes 10 seconds to replenish instead of the standard 30 for the sandwich. It can be replenished if you pick up a health pack while you're at full HP, and it only counts as a small health pack when dropped on the ground instead of a medium one, which does kind of suck. That's the basics of the chocolate bar, so why is it so special and why am I talking about it? Most people just think of this weapon as a gimmick item that allows you to tank a bit more damage for the downside of having to curb your ham and cheese addiction. Is this true? To an extent, I suppose. However, the DeLocust Bar is far more useful than just that. The few heavy mains in existence know this, but very few outside of this weird niche know the 2 major upsides this item has. Weapon, item, snack, whatever you want to call it. First, it breaks a lot of damage thresholds, which allows Heavy to survive some encounters he wouldn't have otherwise. This means he can now survive 3 meat shots from the scattergun, Force of Nature, Soda Popper, Backscatter from the front, and Babyface's Blaster. 3 pills from any grenade launcher except the Loose Cannon, which is still kind of funky. 1 crit pill, 2 quickscope headshots, 5 melee hits from any class with a melee that does 65 damage. There's probably quite a few I missed, but in general these are the major thresholds you can expect to now survive when you would have died otherwise. And some of these are kind of big, especially the pill and the quickscopes. Those are probably the biggest one. And even not counting these massive thresholds, well, he still has 50 more health. That's 4 extra pistol shots, 1 extra loose cannon direct hit, 6 extra SMG shots, an extra sniper no-scope, and many more that I can't think of right this moment, which kind of leads me into the other part that not many people consider. Okay, this is only 50 extra health on heavy, the tankiest class anyway. What's 50 extra health? That may not seem too valuable, but here's the thing. Unless somebody sees you consume said chocolate bar, no one's going to know that you have that extra 50 health. You see, in Team Fortress 2, there's sort of an unwritten rule of sorts that weapons kind of either have to be visible or have some sort of indication that you are above your standard amount of health of the class. Banners, the gunslinger, the booties, the old Darwin's Danger Shield before they got rid of the 25 health bonus are all visible on the player model. The Eyelander has the green eye glow effect, which gives it a pass. The Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol and Backburner, though, well, actually the Backburner was changed a long time ago for good reason, but the Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol lost the 15 health bonus because of this. This was so you aren't fighting an enemy. Let's say you're fighting a scout, you do a specific amount of damage, and then, nope, he actually had this weapon that you didn't even know he had, and now he takes more hits to kill. You thought he took 2 melee swings, but no, he actually takes 3 now because he has 15 more health, and you had no idea because he never pulled out the Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol. It was the same for the Atomizer. No, it didn't give you extra health, but it was changed for the same reason, because the passive ability to triple jump and nobody knew that you could do it was kind of a big deal. Weapons with penalties are fine because it's not really an issue if you expect to do 125 damage, but oh, you only had to do 100 damage because the spy had the big earner, or 110 damage because some idiot scout thought the Sandman was still good. This is not the same with the Locust Bar. You could just eat 3 pills and leave the Demoman perplexed till he decides to shoot you with the 4th pill. Seriously though, it can cheese some encounters a little bit, and if a lot of people are very locked in on thresholds and stuff like that, you can just throw them off. Some newer players may not really get the memo, and most people will just keep shooting you anyway, but you can survive encounters that you shouldn't necessarily survive, and especially with something like Sniper, if you knew he had 350 health, you would just charge a bit more. But a sniper might not assume that, so he might hit you with 2 quickscope headshots and, oh, nope, you're alive. Do I think that the Locust Bar is better than the Sandwich? No. Most of the time anyway. But the Locust Bar works as a lunchbox item and has its moments. I do not recommend you sleep on it. Though, don't eat too much of it heavy. You probably should switch over to the Sandwich once in a while, light on the mayo. Maybe the banana too. Okay, that's enough. That'll do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Tune back in on the 10th when I upload my major projects, and on the 20th when I upload the same kind of video next month for Engineer. Or you can go back in the catalog and scout through Demoman. Depending on when you're watching this, maybe all 9 are done by this point, but I will be posting a new class every month up until July of 2025. I will catch you guys later. Thank you. Bye.